So, today I'm going to be speaking about a couple of elements of strong narrative writing. And the first is a clearly described setting, and the second is the inclusion of rich, vivid details. What do I mean when I say a clearly described setting? You need to ground your reader in time and place. Now, remember that you could be writing your story, an essay about a contemporary American event set in a contemporary American place. But again, you might be writing about the future. You might be setting your story in a planet in 2050 that has been colonized by humans and terraformed. You might also be writing about a time traveler who goes back in time and finds himself in the Cretaceous or the Jurassic period surrounded by dinosaurs. So, whatever your time and place, make sure that you specify it for your reader so that your reader is not lost. Arrange your narrative chronologically or reverse chronologically. So, when I say chronologically, I mean that it's moving from the present to the future, and reverse chronologically means that it's moving from it's moving back in time. So when you're writing reverse chronologically, you would tell the reader what happened and then you would move your way back to describe how and why it happened. The sequence, however, needs to be made clear. Make sure that it's not muddled or vague or fuzzy, right? Choose between scene and summary. Just to recapitulate, a summary is when you take a series of events and you condense them and you describe them to your reader. You're also kind of glossing over certain things, right? But when you're creating a scene, you are grounding your reader in an event and you're drawing it out and you're dramatizing it. So choose wisely between scene and summary and try a mix of both. Strive for specificity and vividness. What do I mean when I say specificity and vividness? Let's say you are writing about a car that crosses the street in front of your bungalow. You might just write that it's a car, but you could also write that it's a red car or a red sedan. So the moment you say red sedan, your reader can better visualize this car, right? And if I wanted to add vividness, I could perhaps write about a maroon Mercedes with black tinted windows. So again, I'm adding specificity and vividness. And instead of saying just car, which is generic, I'm making that description more specific. Use details. Let's say you're writing about medieval England. You might want to describe perhaps the churches and the spires of the cathedrals and the let's say the brick buildings, the bridges. If you're writing about, for example, Victorian London, you might want to learn from others who've also written about Victorian London. For example, Charles Dickens, the Bronte sisters, William Blake, etc. So read works by authors who've also attempted to write about the places that you are attempting to write about. Make whatever details you include vital to the plot. There's only so much space that you have to include details, but there's no dearth of the details that you can include. So, whatever you're including, be mindful about the limitations that you have and only include that which is vital to the plot. Show the effect of time. There's only You can only use your words to convey time's effect. So use descriptive details to do that. When Tolkien wrote in Lord of the Rings about Hobbit returning home, he used he used details to describe how the Shire had was facing new struggles now, right? So try to show how time may have affected a certain landscape or a people, and these changes might be man-made and cultural. They might also be changes that have taken place as a result of the environmental passage, the elements kind of wearing a place away. So whatever it is, you can use language to show it. Use symbolism. Symbols are like metaphors, they carry meaning. If your narrative is exploring the theme of death, you might want to use symbols that are associated with death or create new symbols. You could use, skeletons, for example, are very cliche, but you might want to perhaps look at animals that have traditionally been linked to themes of death, like ravens, black crows. Edgar Allan Poe uses black ravens to symbolize death, right? So this is a way that you could create a sense of foreboding and an ominous ambiance of mystery and suspense, and implicitly kind of allude to death without explicitly stating it out, right? That's how symbols are important for us writers. And lastly, evoke the senses. There are 5 senses that you can evoke. Allow your reader to smell, feel, touch, hear, and see what you are describing. So, firstly, you might want to appeal to the visual senses, describe what is being shown to the reader, how it looks. So, colors, sizes, shapes, things like that. That's the visual sense. The second is the auditory sense. Allow your reader to hear what is being written about. So, is like the tolling of the silvery tolling of bells, for example, or people singing, or music in the background, people talking to each other in hushed voices, things like that, right? The third is tactile, or the sense of touch. Describe textures, temperatures, things cold, cold, hot, grating, harsh, rocky, things like that. The fourth is olfactory, or the sense of smell. Is something smelling foul and pungent, or sweet and fruity. And the fifth is gustatory, or the sense of taste. So it's something sweet, salty, bitter, sour, things like that. And an example of a way in which you could use all these senses, which is ideally what you should strive to do, is, let's say I, as a writer, am trying to write about a coffee shop. I might want to include details about, the sound of the snow outside my window, or the rain drumming against a glass window, or the bell that keeps tinkling every time someone opens and closes the door, or the whirring and the buzzing of the coffee machine, people speaking, and people laughing, laughter, the smell of coffee, freshly brewed coffee, the taste of lavender, hazelnut coffee, maybe a song playing in the background by Fleet Foxes. These are just some of the things I can think about that I might want to include if I were to describe a coffee shop in my story. So just to go back and reiterate the things that I want you to take away from today's lecture. The first is show rather than tell. Try a mix of both showing and telling. And if you're including dialogues to your narrative, make sure that those dialogues are important and relevant, right? Um, Make the people, places, and the events come alive for your reader, because you don't just want to capture your reader's attention. You also want to capture your reader's imagination, right? And yes, assume that your readers are unfamiliar with your stories as well as your setting. So let's say you're writing a narrative that is based in a Southern American town. You might want to name the town and describe the town, despite the fact that your audience might be American. So don't assume that just because your audience is American, they'd be familiar with this place. Name the place, describe the place. And if you're choosing to withhold the name of the place, you could make up the name of a place, right? So just make these decisions intentionally, okay? Don't forget to make these decisions, because they're very important. And lastly, choose wisely between scene and summary, and try a mix of both scene and summary. So I want to leave you all with an exercise. Look at this picture and let's try and describe it, okay? This is a setting, we want to describe it. So what do we see here? We see an island. There's a sense of seclusion, because this island is sequestered in tropical waters, not just any waters, but tropical waters of, a bay or a lagoon or an ocean, a sea. These are tranquil, placid, lucid, clear waters. They're emerald, almost cerulean, but more emerald. They're a mix of blue-green hues. There's a path leading to this island, so again, it adds to the sense of seclusion. The island is a rocky island with lush green vegetation. There are palm trees swaying in the wind, and the skies are blue and clear, right? So this is an exercise that we can use to, you know, deconstruct a setting, so that when writers, we are trying to construct a setting, we can find words to better describe the setting, right? So I want you to do an exercise now. I want you to look at this setting. I'm not going to say anything. I want you to look at this setting, and I want you to describe this setting in 300 words, approximately 300 words. Okay?